Hi, my name is Felix Matos Rodríguez, and I am the Chancellor of the City University of New York. People who know me call me Felo, and this is my conversation space on CUNY TV, Café con Felo. Bienvenidos a Café con Felo. Today, I am deeply honored to have on my show someone I have long admired, a trailblazer Puerto Rican woman of many firsts and with a storied public service career, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez. La congresista Velázquez was the first Puerto Rican woman elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. She was the first Hispanic woman to serve as a ranking member of a full House committee. She was also the first Latina to chair a full congressional committee. And although she recently announced she would not seek re-election, she is currently finishing her 16th term as a member of Congress representing New York's 7th Congressional District, covering parts of Brooklyn and Queens. Over the next half hour, we're going to talk with Congresswoman Velázquez about her impressive career, her humble beginnings, her time teaching at CUNY, her legacy, and what she thinks is important for today's leaders. Bienvenida, Congresista Velázquez, un honor tenerla aquí. So happy to have you here.
Gracias, Felo, de tenerme aquí. A mí esto es un honor y un privilegio poder hablar contigo y con los estudiantes de CUNY.
But thank you. Café con Felo. So my first question, are you a coffee drinker? And if you are, where do you get it from and how do you take it?
I am a coffee drinker. And it's very heavy. In the morning, I make my cappuccino. And I only take one because otherwise I will drive everyone near me crazy. It's Café Pilón. That's the one that I like because it's strong.
Puerto Rican family coffee. I'm also a coffee drinker, and I get it also sometimes from Puerto Rico. I bring some. So let me go back in time, 1992, your first race for Congress. Folks might not know that in that race, you defeated an incumbent, which is traditionally in politics not an easy thing. So some people might say that before there was AOC, there was NV, right? Can you go back as to what led you to decide you wanted to run for Congress and why that moment and that race?
Fellow, it was a time when Puerto Ricans were left behind in New York City politics. We have a school board of election that didn't have representation of any Latino at the board, which I found unbelievable because Latino students represent a large component of the student population. And we fought hard to get Dr. Reyes, Luis Reyes, to be named at the school board. Police brutality against Puerto Ricans and other Latinos, the lack of social services for the Latino community. And I felt that it was time. As you know, I worked for the governor of Puerto Rico. I was the director of the offices of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico in the United States. And I told the governor of Puerto Rico the best service, the best help that we could provide to the Puerto Rican community was to empower them politically. And that is how I came with the idea and a proposal to design a voter registration campaign among Puerto Ricans nationwide.
Atrévete.
Atrévete, dare to. We registered 250,000 Puerto Ricans in New York City, and it changed the political landscape at that moment. It helped David Dinkins become the first African-American mayor in New York City, and Harold Washington, the first African-American mayor in Chicago. The participation of Puerto Ricans went up from 22% to 56% in that election. So then it was the census that was taken and the redistribution of congressional districts. Once again, despite the fact that we represented almost 20% of the population, they didn't create a district with a majority Hispanic district. We fought the commission and we went to court, federal court, and we won. So a district was designed to increase Latino representation, and immediately community activists asked me to run in that primary. It was supposed to be a primary for Latino candidates, but it happens that New York City, New York State lost 2 seats. And then the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Stephen Solars, from New York, found himself without a district. And he looked at the weakest link, the newly created district, because there were 5 Latinos running. The guy had $4 million war chest, and he said, this is for me to take. But he didn't know that Nydia Velázquez was running in that race.
You mentioned Atrévete, and I want to talk about that because after that campaign, many other countries outside the U.S. learned to mobilize their different populations for political lobbying, and so the Puerto Rican experience that you led with Atrévete in that campaign became a model for other countries in mobilizing their voters in the country, as was also that office of the Office of Puerto Rican Affairs in the government of Puerto Rico. So those are things that people, I think there's something about your career that people know, but the seeds that were planted there have been used by other groups and other countries to influence the political process in New York. Tell us a little bit about La Profesora Nydia Velázquez and your experience teaching at CUNY and the University of Puerto Rico.
I taught at the University of Puerto Rico, right? And I became the youngest chair of the social science department. I was 22. So then I came here to Hunter College, and it was just one of the most greatest experience in my professional life because I was surrounded by young first generation students with a lot of energy and grit. And I wanted to instill in them forward thinking, to look at issues, but also come up with solutions. And I guess I put so much energy into the discussion that they felt that I needed to run for office. And they said, why don't you run for office? I said, are you crazy? Politics is not for me. Then 5 years later, there I was running for office.
Yes. Because I mean, before, I mean, people should know, it was in the city council before you went to.
I was the first Latina to serve in New York City, city council.
So one other thing which I think is always very interesting in your career is that you have always been very independent, right? You've always spoken your mind. You've always represented your community. When you look back, right, and I assume there's so many things that you can talk about, but are there like 1 or 2 legacy items that you go like, when people think about Nydia Velázquez, I want them to remember blank?
The American people have a U.S. Supreme Court that looks like America. I thought back when Obama became the president that it was time to have a Hispanic member, justice, right? And I went and talked to the president, and I told him that I had the best, most qualified, experienced candidate for the U.S. Supreme Court, and that was Sonia Sotomayor. The rest is history.
Yes.
And I am so proud of her career, her decision, how committed she is to the rule of law and the Constitution, and how she always take her life experience in how she approach legal issues. And I'm very proud of that. Also, that as my role as the top Democrat in the Small Business Committee, I expanded opportunities for Hispanic businesses, minority businesses, veterans, and women. That after the Great Depression, that I worked to reform the financial institution, the system, to put guardrails to prevent another recession like it happened in 2008, 2009. And then later on during the pandemic, I was able to craft the legislation that provided a lifeline to save small businesses in our country.
It was so important, some of the loans and some of the other funding that was provided so they could keep going and keep
And
paying.
the help institutions like CUNY
I know,
to get relief.
We're very lucky that in your district you have 4 CUNY schools. The law school, Brooklyn College, City Tech, and LaGuardia. And you've been very, very supportive. Give us a sense as to why do you think CUNY is such an important institution? You talk about your teaching, but I know that you take very good care of our institutions in the district.
Because it's a gateway to the middle class. It's a gateway to opportunity. It's not only a university system, it's more than that. It provides opportunity for low-income students, for immigrants who have been here trying to really achieve the American dream. That is what CUNY is. It is a pathway to achieve the American dream. And the best support that I could provide is provide the funding to allow CUNY to have the best, most modernized buildings, equipment, so that these students have an opportunity to fulfill their aspiration and fulfill their talents and their skills. Yep. And contribute to the American economy.
Well, in that particular
it's an
case,
engine of economic activity.
You mentioned Puerto Rico, where you were born, and proud Boricua in the town of Yabucoa, and large Puerto Rican family, I think of 9, right? And I know that you are always very, very proud of those, of your origins, of your family background, of what you were able to achieve. Can you give our viewers a little bit of a take of the Velázquez family and your upbringing in Yabucoa, just for them to get a sense of that?
Well, yes, we are a big family, 9 children. My father was a sugarcane worker. It was tough growing up in rural town of Yabucoa, Barrio Limones. But even though we were poor, my father always took the time to talk to us about education. He helped us connect the dots. Puerto Rico and my family, they shaped me into who I am today, my values, my belief, my commitment, the notion that change will not happen if you don't get engaged, if you don't become active. You cannot sit on the sidelines. You need to get into the ring and fight and demand. And coming from a big family, you gotta be tough.
Yeah.
So
which one of the 9 were you?
I'm in the middle.
In the middle, yes. But all the middle children always complain that it's always tougher.
Right. So, yeah, it was. But despite the fact that we struggle, my father used to plant whatever we ate, you know, from beans to yautía, veggies, all that. But there was something that was beautiful and wonderful. My father, at the time of having dinner, he always talked to us about the experiences in the sugarcane fields, or that he was organizing the workers. And I was able to connect the dots, that in order to change your social reality, that you needed to demand change. And then he always was talking to us about the political parties in Puerto Rico, and it was just like every day around 5 or 6, it was a teaching experience. And then I saw him getting more active in Puerto Rican politics at the local level, and organizing meetings like with 100 people, and then he had a flatbed truck, stepping into the flatbed truck and talking, and what I saw was a person that was moving people, how they reacted to what he was saying. And I told myself, one day I want to be like him.
And what were, I mean, can you share what parties he was affiliated with when he was?
Popular Democratic Party, yes.
That was at the beginning stages at that time, right?
That's right,
So, yeah,
yes.
the origins of the
And Luis
party.
Muñoz Marín, the governor of Puerto Rico, used to go, and he organized all this and mobilized people to come out.
And then, so did he always instill on you that you were going to go to the university and get an education? Because if that was the case, at that time, generationally, particularly for women, sometimes the families didn't want them to pursue an education past high school.
Yeah, no, my father always told us, the day that I am not here, I will not leave you money because we were poor. The only thing that I could leave you is education. Wow. And when he came from the fields, every single day, the first question that he asked, did you eat? Or did you do your homework?
So that's the
So it helped me connect the dots that education is key.
You're coming to your political retirement, at least from Congress, right? I assume that there's a world of possibilities of things that you could be thinking about doing. Could you give the audience a little bit of a taste of at least some of the things that you are thinking about and considering as your term in Congress will end?
Sitting on boards.
Okay.
Not corporate ones, good ones.
Okay.
That have a social commitment, writing, and maybe teaching.
So you say boards, right? Any particular topics that you think that you'd be more interested in? I mean, because one of the fascinating things about you is that small business, you've done that. Education, you've done that. Mm-hmm. Areas of health, you've done. I mean, you could really go into any fields. Anything that you think sort of drives you particularly?
Economic development. I think that is an area where we have to incentivize our young people to be aware of how can they build wealth. Mm-hmm. And what are the economic opportunities that exist, economic wealth and open up a business, what are the programs that exist to help you. So there's so much to be done in that area that is one that I would like to focus on.
Excellent. So now we're going to have to take a short break. When we come back, we have some great questions from CUNY students for La Congresista Velázquez. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Café con Felo. We're here with Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, and now it's time to hear from the next generation. So let's take some questions from students who are from Hunter College and are working at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies. And the first question comes from Mark.
What do you think are the biggest challenges facing Puerto Rico and the diaspora currently in the U.S.?
Well,
so many things to say about the diaspora.
Yes. Well, for Puerto Rican students here in New York and across the nation, like Florida and Chicago, one of the biggest challenges that they have is the affordability issue, the affordability crisis that we are facing. And for students who graduate, the challenge is that they need to pay back those students' loans, right? And then integrate into the workforce, but yet they are not making enough money to be able to become independent people in living in their own place. So that is one of the biggest issues. But the same is happening in Puerto Rico. Displacement, gentrification that is happening. And it is happening because of the structural issues that Puerto Rico is facing, given this unequal relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States. Also, the tax laws in Puerto Rico favored Americans who they are attracted to come to Puerto Rico. They don't pay taxes, federal taxes here. They only pay 4% of federal tax. And we are talking about millionaires. They are using Puerto Rico as a tax haven. That really shortchange the people of Puerto Rico, but also the people in the United States, because they're not paying taxes here and they are paying minimum taxes in Puerto Rico, and then they don't comply with the requirements of job creation in the island. I wrote to the commissioner, the IRS commissioner, and there is an investigation going on. Close to 5,000 people that are supposedly residing in Puerto Rico and contributing to the Puerto Rican economy, but it's not true.
There's no evidence of that contribution.
And so I'm demanding accountability and transparency.
On the issue of affordability, it's so close to our heart at CUNY. We're very proud that around 70% of our students graduate with zero debt, and between the state aid from New York and Pell, about 68 go to school tuition free. So addressing that issue, but they still have to face housing and all the other costs, which are,
even, if they're going to start a family, child care is almost $30,000 a year in New York City.
Yeah. Actually, that is the equivalent of 4 years of tuition.
You can
at CUNY.
imagine.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Let's take another question from, I think it's Tracy, another student from Hunter.
How does your Puerto Rican background influence the way that you advocate and make decisions in Congress?
As I said before, Puerto Rico shaped me. And the values that I hold dear, the resiliency, the commitment to public service, it is all come from, having lived in Puerto Rico. And the important thing about it is that I take that lived experience with me when I go to Washington, when we are discussing, what are the issues that are impacting Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. Well, we have a health care system that is not treated the same way as here in the United States. We only provide minimum support for Medicaid in Puerto Rico. And so all that understanding, all those experiences that I went through when I was growing up in Puerto Rico helped me shape my legislative agenda when it comes to issues related to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think we have one last question from Joseph.
Why do you think Puerto Rican studies programs are important for students today?
Asking about the importance of Puerto Rican studies programs, Puerto Rican studies courses. Why do you think that they're important today?
It is important because it helps promote pride among Puerto Rican students. It is also important to have a sense of belonging, and it also improved the reaffirmation that Puerto Ricans, it doesn't matter where you are, is one nation. So the Puerto Rican diaspora always pay attention to what's going on in Puerto Rico. I used to say to the governor of Puerto Rico, you don't have to pay lobbyists in the United States. The best lobbyist that you can have is the Puerto Rican community, the activists that go and knock on the door of a member of Congress to say, I am here, I am a voter, and Puerto Rico is an important issue for me, and it should be an important issue for you, because Puerto Rico is part of the United States. And as you know, is the unresolved political issue of the colonial rule that have existed for over 124 years, that create the economic conditions that exist in Puerto Rico. If you are not a state, you're not going to get the kind of federal funds that are required to provide the kind of education that Puerto Ricans should be entitled to, or a healthcare system where people feel that you could go to a hospital and you could get the services that you need. But the biggest issue here is that we need to resolve the issue of the colonial situation of Puerto Rico. And that is a responsibility of any member of Congress. And for 34 years,
You've been heading that battle and trying to find the right way to address it, and I always will commend you because you've always done that with your own voice, respecting the diversity of opinions that the Puerto Ricans have on which way to go, but always stressing that it needs to be addressed.
Right, and I passed my Puerto Rican Status Act in 2022, the first time in the history of this relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States that people, the different sectors came together and put forward a legislative vehicle. What is missing is the will of the Senate to embrace such legislation.
Everything goes to die in the Senate when it comes with the status of Puerto Rico, which is a real shame, and it's been a historic blemish.
Yeah, well, how could we be promoting and lecturing democracy in the Middle East, in Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, and here in our own backyard we have subjects. We have a colony. That is wrong, morally wrong. And it might be my only regret that for 34 years, basically, I've been fighting to bring Congress to resolve the political situation of Puerto Rico once and for all. So
that is, I think, a way to end the show with that call for action, which has been so part of your career and your legacy. Congresista, thank you for your time here today. Thank you for your incredible contributions to New York City, to Puerto Rico, to all of us, your decades of devoted public service. I'm honored to be here with you today. Personally, I wish you the very best because you deserve also some time for you after all that you have done for all of us. And maybe in the next Café con Felo, we'll have you back with a book.
Oh, yeah.
With your stories and your memoirs. But
Thank you, Felo.
Delighted. And to all of you, thank you for joining us for Café con Felo. Tune in again Mondays through Thursdays at 7 p.m. on CUNY TV for more conversations with the leaders who are making a difference here in New York. Saludos.